Dr. Nathan Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Otherwise known as the nitric oxide guy, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We're going to go in a couple different directions, all related to the benefits of nitric oxide. And before we do that, it'd be great if you can kind of give us your background from UT Austin to working with, I was looking at, you worked with Dr. Ferid Murad, right? And
Sure.
he shared a Nobel Prize in medicine related to nitric oxide. So looking forward to kind of hearing your background to get started.
Sure. Well, I grew up a small town Texas boy. The high school, I went to the University of Texas at Austin, got a degree in biochemistry, and then quickly realized to really do what I wanted to do or to achieve my goals, I needed to further my education. So from there, I went to LSU School of Medicine, where I got a PhD in molecular and cellular physiology. Finished my PhD in about 2.5 years. Then I went to Boston University School of Medicine, where I did a postdoctoral fellowship in cardiology and in vascular biology at the Whitaker Cardiovascular Institute. And then from there, I was recruited by Ferid Murad, who had just won a Nobel Prize a couple of years before for the discovery of nitric oxide as a signaling molecule. So we'd, just published many studies on nitric oxide. He was obviously familiar with my research and work. And so I joined his drug discovery program at UT and got my first academic position there as a professor of molecular medicine. And, that's where we started the innovation and, got more than 100 peer-reviewed publications and several dozen issued patents.
Wow. So kind of that background working with Dr. Murad, kind of on the research and theory, you kind of put a lot of those, the technology in practice, right?
That's right. Yeah, so our whole focus, really going back 25 years, was to understand how the human body makes nitric oxide, what are the pathways, and then once we understood those mechanistically, then we could start to understand what leads to a loss of the natural production. And now once we understood that, then and only then could we start to develop technology,
Okay.
drug therapy, product technology that restores and repletes nitric oxide production and signaling. And that's the benefit of my 25, 30 years in research in medicine is we understand these mechanisms to the extent that we can correct them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting in some of those mechanisms. Before we do that, for the people like me that maybe didn't pay attention in biochemistry, give us a little background on nitric oxide 101 first. We'll get into some of the cardiovascular disease and some of the different platforms.
Sure. Well, nitric oxide is a gas. Interesting. It's a signaling molecule. It's how cells in the body communicate. It's primarily known as a vasodilator. So when it's produced, it opens up the blood vessels. It's going to improve blood flow, oxygen delivery. But it's more than a vasodilator today. We know that it mobilizes our stem cells. So we have more stem cells in circulation. So we can repair and replace dysfunctional cells. It activates the mitochondria, which are the energy producing organelles of the cell. So we're going to create more energy more efficiently. And then it activates an enzyme called telomerase, which again is part of this longevity. A Nobel Prize was awarded for this discovery more than a decade ago. But the telomerase prevents our telomeres from getting shorter. So we know that if we have shorter telomeres, we have a shorter lifespan. So everything we know about nitric oxide, improving blood flow, mobilizing stem cells, enhancing mitochondrial function, preventing telomere shortening, all lead to a longer, better life free of disease.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about cardiovascular health, and you have this phase 3 program.
That's right.
Kind of give us a little bit a background there.
Once we figured out that nitric oxide is the loss of nitric oxide is the earliest event in the onset and progression of all chronic disease, including cardiovascular disease, which remains the number one killer of men and women worldwide, we started to, how do we give nitric oxide back? If your body's lost the ability to make nitric oxide, how do we give it back to you therapeutically? And this is extremely important in patients with heart disease, because now for over 100 years, people with ischemic heart disease have been given nitroglycerin or isosorbide dinitrate. And these drugs have been used hundreds of years. But in 1977, the reason Ferid Murad won a Nobel Prize is he was the first to discover or reveal that these drugs were metabolized into nitric oxide gas. They dilate the blood vessels, and they can improve blood flow through the coronary arteries. But the problem with this drug therapy is people develop tolerance to them. So you have to wean patients on and off of them. But if you look at the long-term outcome studies, patients on organic nitrate therapy typically do worse, poor outcomes. So this told us, well, they need nitric oxide to dilate the blood vessels, but we need a form of nitric oxide that doesn't cause tolerance, that doesn't actually make the patient get worse. And that's where my technology comes in, because we make a nitric oxide releasing lozenge, we have it in consumer products, but we're developing as drug therapy, that actually dilates the coronary arteries. So as soon as you take it, it releases nitric oxide gas, opens up the coronary arteries, and now you can get adequate blood flow to the working heart muscle. And what we're finding is the angina goes away, cardiac function improves, ejection fraction improves, and people get better. But most importantly, you don't develop tolerance to this type of nitric oxide delivery, because number one, we're giving it to you in the form of a gas, and we're restoring the function of the enzyme in the lining of the blood vessels. So now the body's natural ability to produce nitric oxide improves. So patients actually get better over time. And so we've got a drug program now in phase 3 through the FDA that we hope, and we're pretty ambitious, but pretty confident that this drug will perform, and we'll finish the trials probably the next year, and hopefully have a drug approved and on the market early 2027.
Oh, wow. Can you dig a little deeper into the loss of nitric oxide as you get older? I mean, I think I had a note that after even the age of 20, you might lose 10 to 20%. Is that a correct data point?
It is. I mean, that's what the clinical data tell us. And in these studies where they take people through decade, like 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and look at what we call endothelial function, how well the endothelial cells, the cells that line all blood vessels throughout the body, produce nitric oxide. And so on a population-based kind of studies, we see that 10 to 12% decline per decade on average. But just because that's what the normal population is experiencing doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So we understand, again, we know how the human body makes it. We know what leads to this age-related decline, and we just have to correct it. Because now we know that we can prevent the age-related decline simply by diet and lifestyle. So the things that are leading to a loss of nitric oxide production, it's really the American diet. It's the standard American diet, what we call the SAD diet. It's a diet high in carbohydrates, high in sugar, really bad fats, seed oils, and lack of proper digestion through the use of antacids and proton pump inhibitors and antiseptic mouthwash and fluoride in the toothpaste, fluoride in the drinking water, and then some drug therapy. All this leads, and then a sedentary lifestyle. So if we eliminate the things that are inhibiting the natural production of nitric oxide, then we start doing things that stimulate and activate it, then we really don't see this loss of nitric oxide. Because I'm 52 years old, but my biological age is 29. So almost, what was that, almost 25-year difference that I've aged backwards, because I understand that enzymology and the biochemistry of this enzyme, and I'm not doing the things that are inhibiting the natural production, and I'm doing on a daily basis, very deliberately, things that activate and stimulate nitric oxide production. And by all measures, it's paying off.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Kind of falls in with, you just laid it out: seed oils, carbohydrates, all these, the bad diet of Americans and others leading to these issues.
And then drug therapy. I mean, standard drug therapy. If I wanted to make, here's the perfect recipe for making people sick. Put fluoride in the drinking water, put fluoride in the toothpaste. It's a neurotoxin, it's an antiseptic, and it shuts down your thyroid function. Put everybody on an antacid, Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium. These are over-the-counter medications. If you're admitted in the hospital, no matter for what cause, give you an antacid, and then get your cholesterol below 200, where you can't make vitamin D, you become immunocompromised, you can't make testosterone, and you can't make estrogen. And that's most Americans, because that's the healthcare system today. And it's the best it's the best financial business model in the world, but it's at the expense of our own health.
Right. Thank you for saying that. Let's keep on the cardiovascular track, because I became aware of a company called Nitrix that was involved with the delivery of nitric oxide in indwelling catheters to minimize for anti-inflammatory, for antimicrobial. Hospital-borne infections are a major burden on patients, their families, and the system, and also antithrombotic. And just kind of wanted to get your kind of picture on this. Is there kind of in a med tech, medical technology, catheter delivery system, do you see kind of have a vision for how nitric oxide could be delivered to prevent some of these issues?
Yeah, look, nitric oxide coated stents have been around for many years,
Okay.
but that's at that point they provide benefit because if you can create a certain release of nitric oxide through drug therapy, what we call nonoates, which basically slowly release nitric oxide over a certain period of time, then you can maintain some level of vasodilation, and you can suppress the vascular inflammation that leads to restenosis even after stenting. But for me, if you've got a stent and you've got obstructive coronary disease, it's really too late. Maybe not too late, but we want to catch these people early on before they have ischemic heart disease, before they have a heart attack or stroke. And so the other challenge with those is these nonoates, there's when it releases nitric oxide, there's the residual compound that's left. And nobody really knows what happens to these. So they're nitric oxide releasing, but it's still a synthetic compound that it still remains around. So where does it go? What does it become? And is it even toxic?
Mhm.
And so what we've tried to focus on is how do we deliver nitric oxide that recapitulates nitric oxide production and signaling at rates, at fluxes that the body would normally produce, and start to implement this early on so you don't get heart disease, so you don't have to have a stent, so you don't have a heart attack or stroke, because medicine has been reactive. What we're trying to do is make people proactive.
Right.
And unfortunately, fear is the most potent motivating factor for humans, and most people don't make changes until they have a heart attack or stroke. And for many, it's the first sign of heart attack or stroke is sudden cardiac death. So
Mhm.
they have no way to correct it. But again, we have to be proactive instead of reactive. But look, there's a huge movement to develop nitric oxide based therapies, because we know without a doubt that the loss of nitric oxide is the earliest event in the onset and progression of chronic disease.
Okay. Very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's move on to some kind of health related. I'm into the healthy lifestyle, like some of the
Yeah.
things that you talked about: eating correctly, getting exercise, sunlight, and I started red light therapy more recently. I did a podcast with the owner or the founder of Scott Nelson of Juve. I don't have it with me, but red light therapy. And I
Yeah.
noticed that you have also done some research related to the synergies of red light therapy and nitric oxide with your partnership with LightSim, right?
That's right.
Or collaboration with LightSim. Can you kind of dig into that? That's very interesting.
Yeah, this goes back to the 1950s, this concept of photo relaxation. And this was actually discovered by Bob Fertzgott, who shared the Nobel Prize for discovery of nitric oxide, but this was completely independent of his research on nitric oxide. Turns out it's nitric oxide related, what he was experiencing or observing in the 1950s. But this concept that certain wavelengths of light can lead to vasodilation. And we published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, I believe in 2001, showing that we identified these vasoactive stores of nitric oxide that are released when exposed to certain frequencies or wavelengths of light. And so specifically the far infrared, really the almost full infrared, even it provides that energy that releases nitric oxide bound to metals. So when nitric oxide is produced, again, it's a gas, but it's gone in less than a second. And it's gone because it binds to metals, it's oxidized to nitrite or nitrate, or it binds to cysteine residues on proteins or amino acids. But we can release those and re-release and get the vasoactive properties of nitric oxide when we're exposed to light. So what we found was, and the interesting thing about the LightStim LED bed is we did a clinical study and we just put people on the light bed 40 minutes a day, 3 times a week. And we found that we could lower blood pressure in hypertensive patients by 21 millimeters of mercury, simply by putting them on the bed, fully exposed to the red light, 20 minutes on their front, 20 minutes on their back, 3 times a week. And we identified this is a nitric oxide related phenomenon, but we could potentiate the effects of red light therapy by taking our lozenge, because in sick people who can't make nitric oxide, there's less nitric oxide to be released by red light.
Ah.
So we titrate them in with nitric oxide with the lozenge, and then we expose them to red light, whether it's infrared sauna, red light beds, and then it's re-releasing or potentiating the effects of nitric oxide. So this is a really, and this whole concept of biohacking, what we call
Yeah.
biostacking,
Hmm.
because all this is many of these modalities, including PMF, pulse electromagnetic frequencies, are dependent upon having adequate nitric oxide production capacities.
Biostacking. Yeah.
Biostacking. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. On the same health related front, I believe that there's some benefits to the lozenges as a pre workout or when you're working out. Can you get into a little bit of that about that?
Sure.
I've my background is in strength training, and all the people that I've trained with over the years is always different modalities for
That's
getting
right.
pumped up to train, and so just want to get your input on that as well.
Now, look, the athletes and in the weight trainers were the first
Yeah.
early adopters of nitric oxide. So, once the Nobel Prize was awarded in 1998, you saw the market flooded with, nitric oxide based pre workout pump products, explodes, all that. But those companies didn't understand the science because we're never deficient in these amino acids they were putting in there to make nitric oxide. But if you look at what nitric oxide does as an ergogenic aid and for pre workout or for muscle building, it's basically an improved blood flow, and it's going to improve mitochondrial biogenesis. And it's going to improve metabolic waste clearance, less lactic acid buildup. So your mitochondria are producing more energy more efficiently, even with less oxygen. So you get less lactic acid, better recovery, less soreness. And so there's a huge demand for these products. Unfortunately, most of the products on the market that are marketed towards nitric oxide or as a nitric oxide provide no nitric oxide benefit whatsoever. But we've got hundreds of teams that use my product technology as an ergogenic aid to improve blood flow, circulation, energy production, and it improves endurance. And people take it because it works.
Very interesting. So there's a lot of scammers out there as
A lot
well.
of scammers out there, and as we expand and the awareness around nitric oxide, it's only going to get worse because people want to come in and make money on this. But almost all of these companies have no idea of the science of nitric oxide. They're selling beetroot powders, beetroot things, and grapeseed extract, and
Yeah.
arginine, citrulline, and with no regard to the underlying biochemistry or enzymology. And so it's humorous. It would be humorous, but I think it's dangerous, and it could kill the entire field.
Yeah. Wow. When these lozenges as a pre-workout or just generally, what is the kind of the dosage there, right? Or
Well, interesting because
frequency?
usually one twice a day for what we call maintenance.
Okay.
But the beauty of our nitric oxide delivery system is once you put it in your mouth, it's in what we call an orally disintegrating tablet. And as soon as it hits your saliva, it starts producing nitric oxide gas. So you can take this lozenge as you're beginning to work out, as you're walking into the gym. And I designed it to have a dissolution rate of about 5 to 6 minutes. So it's going to take 5 or 6 minutes because I want to release a certain amount of nitric oxide over a certain period of time. But we can see dilation of your carotid arteries within 10 or 12 seconds of putting that lozenge in your mouth. And we see an increase in stem cells in circulation. We see, blood pressure normalize within 10, 15, 20 minutes if you've got high blood pressure. If you got normal low blood pressure, it's not going to affect your blood pressure.
Yeah.
So those are the acute effects of nitric oxide. But if you take this on a daily basis, we see the adaptive effects of mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning you have more mitochondria per cell generating more energy more efficiently. And it's going to improve tissue oxygenation, blood oxygen saturation. And it's just going to enhance your workout and make everything you do work better.
Okay. I'm interested in this, and I know a lot of my listeners are. Where do they find? Is there a web? I'll put the website on the link below. Is it through your company or through Amazon, or just tell us how
No,
to
it's
get a hold?
we have a direct to consumer business called N101.com. It's the letter N, number one, letter O, number one.com. So one nitrogen, one oxygen for nitric oxide. But yeah, we do have an Amazon store. The problem with Amazon, there's a lot of unauthorized resellers on there. We've currently found fraudulent products, people using our label and making capsules. And we don't make capsules. You cannot get nitric oxide in a capsule. Again,
Okay.
it's the gas that we have to produce for you. So, but if you ensure that the Amazon store is N101 by Numa Nitric Oxide, that's our authorized store. And I encourage people, make sure it's that, because I can't guarantee these other products they are fraudulent. We've identified that. Or get it direct from us, N101.com. But yeah, the lozenge is the way to go. We make a fermented beet powder called NO Beets that I use every morning before I work out. And it's a fermented beet powder. You put in 2 to 3 ounces of water, mix it together, and take it as a shot. But That's a nitric oxide producing beet powder. We've taken out the oxalates, the beet taste, the beet pulp, the beet color. We add electrolytes in there for cellular hydration, and we actually add a patented peak ATP to that. So it's going to give, if your mitochondria can't make ATP, then we're providing it for you. So the combination of electrolytes, nitric oxide, ATP gives you an unbelievable workout. I mean, you will feel the energy from this product.
Okay.
No caffeine, no stimulants. It's incredible product.
Okay. I'm definitely going to try it out and get some from my son as well, who's a big workout guy, and we'll
Yeah, my
give you some
kids take it as
feedback.
well.
Okay. I know that you wrote a book. If you could talk a little bit about and share, the cover and tell us a little bit about the book.
Sure. So this is my latest book. I think this is the fifth or sixth book I've published. It's called The Secret of Nitric Oxide: Bringing the Science to Life. And this really, I published this in February through Brick Tower Press and my agent Alan Morrell. We launched it on Fox and Friends up in New York in February. But my goal was to bring to the fore the latest advancements in nitric oxide product technology. So it tells you what nitric oxide is, what led to a Nobel Prize, what did the guys who won the Nobel Prize actually discover, and then in that kind of journey, I've chronicled my journey of discovery. Who I am, where I came from, my background, the discoveries we made that changed the entire paradigm of nitric oxide, and then really starts to convey the science, the complex, complicated science in an easy to read lay version that anybody can understand, but most importantly, can start applying these principles that we know are scientifically and clinically validated into their own life so they can prevent this age-related decline in nitric oxide production and prevent getting sick.
Yeah.
That's the goal of medicine.
Excellent. That book, is that also on the website, or is that on Amazon as well?
It's on, you can find it wherever books are sold. You go to
Okay.
nathansbook.com. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's on our n101.com website. But yeah, it's readily available.
Well, that's pretty cool. You were able to go on Fox and Friends to debut it, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it was a great morning. I was up early, flew to New York in the studio, and had a chance to highlight it and really get the word out there. The book has done very well. It's been #1 on Amazon for many weeks, and yes, it's done well.
Awesome. I don't have on the MedTech Unboxed podcast quite the reach as Fox and Friends, but
Well, hey, any platform is appreciated, because I think the most important thing for me and my #1 objective is to just bring about awareness of nitric oxide so your listeners understand what this molecule is, what it does. But I think most importantly is educating them, inform them to the extent that they don't fall for these deceptive trade practices and advertising they see on TV, because these companies don't know anything about nitric oxide, but they're out there selling so-called nitric oxide products. And it's a waste of money. And my goal is to educate and inform consumers so they don't fall in those traps.
Yeah. Hence the book and getting out there on the podcast and all the great work you do on social media and different platforms. Just kind of wrap things up. Where do you see things going related to this technology, nitric oxide, in the next 3 to 5 years? Can you give us kind of what you think?
Well, I know nitric oxide is going to be the future of medicine. I think our drug therapy in heart disease is going to be a game changer. We've got a drug for Alzheimer's. I think, nitric oxide-based therapies will completely eradicate Alzheimer's and dementia because it addresses the metabolic vascular phenotypes of Alzheimer's. We're making a topical drug for diabetic ulcers. There are other companies out there that are about to get FDA approval for nitric oxide topicals for wound care and drug therapy.
Mhm.
But that's just the beginning. There's really not an indication where nitric oxide at the right dose, at the right time, in the right patient wouldn't be beneficial. It's just a matter of going through the clinical trials and proving safety and efficacy for each indication, each delivery of nitric oxide. And I invite you and your listeners to Austin in April 23rd through 25th of 2026, because I'm hosting and organizing the International Nitric Oxide Conference. We'll have the world's experts there. We'll have companies that are innovating nitric oxide medical technology, drug therapy in Austin at the Fairmont Hotel, April 23rd through 26th, April 23rd through 25th, 2026. And you can go to no2026.com, register. I encourage you to do it now. It's going to be a sold out meeting. We only have a limited number of rooms at the Fairmont. But it's going to be a great event. I've been going to these nitric oxide meetings for the past 25 years, and We finalized the program. We've got Louis Naro coming in, the guy who won the Nobel Prize, the only surviving member of
Wow.
that team. And, the world's experts, Joe Lascalzo, chair of medicine at Harvard, Jonathan Stamler, people all over the world coming over for this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure when I get this out on social to mention that, so more people can attend that. Sounds very interesting, and I'll even try to see if I can go. I'm headed. You said it's at UT, the
No,
area.
it's downtown Austin at the Fairmont Hotel on the
Okay,
Wind
Austin.
River. But
Yeah.
Austin in April is a beautiful time of year. Austin's a wonderful city, great nightlife.
Mhm.
I'm gonna, give you the Texas hospitality. The people that come, many people have never been to Austin, but it's gonna be an event you don't want to miss.
Okay. I'm sure it will be, and I'm looking forward to a lot of things that you have going on, including this and the acceptance of this this therapy. Did you say 2027?
I'm hopeful that by 2027 we'll have a drug approved and on the market for heart disease.
The drug. Okay. Okay. I will be following that very closely. Dr. Nathan Bryan, thank you so much. It's been a great and very informative conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.